Dan Drake, back on Front Up on Geno TV and Channel 99. We have as our guest today SarahAlger. Sarah, welcome. Sarah wears a number of hats, but the one that really is of interest to me today is in her role as moderator of town meeting.
Okay.
And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that, and then we can maybe talk about some other things. But the special town meeting in October
Yes.
was...
It fades from memory, but yes.
Intentionally?
No, these things don't tend to stick with me.
No, well, there's no reason why they should, except in this case there was no quorum.
Correct.
And a number of things did not get dealt with that needed to get dealt with or should have been dealt with. And so my question of you is, from your perspective, and you've been moderator for what, 12 years, 15 years now? Longer than that?
Let's say I was first elected in 1997, so you can do the math.
I can do the math. All right, 21 years or so. Anyhow, first of all, let's take a step back. Have you seen a change in the atmosphere of town meeting, the participation, the engagement of people in that over that period of time?
You know, I think a little bit. I think people are slightly less engaged, a little bit more wary of their government, think that it's not worthwhile to participate. I think people are frustrated. Yeah. Okay. So I think it is slightly different.
Well, to come back to then the special town meeting, the fact that there was not a quorum is indicative of either what you really characterize as a sort of cynicism by people about the role of the town meeting and the role of government, or just indifference.
Or potentially a passive-aggressive way of voting no.
Or potentially a passive-aggressive way of voting no. I come at it particularly from, I have views on this all the way down the line, but I come at it particularly from the perspective of the airport, which is a business.
Correct.
It has to be run as a business. And to be able to get decisions made only once a year is a significant obstacle.
Right, I can see where it would be.
To running an efficient, well-run, hopefully well-run
organization. It's hard to be nimble if you can only make a decision once a year.
And then you have something like a special town meeting where the airport seized on an opportunity of a special fund that was set up for airports to get funding for capital projects, which money has been in very short supply recently. And to tee up a special project that is going to cost a lot of money, but is really essential to the safety, and that's the taxiway Echo, the $20 million project that was on the warrant, and then not take any action means that I'm not going to say that we aren't ultimately going to get the money, but it's made it a lot more difficult to get that money. We're going to come back at the town meeting in April and ask for the appropriation, obviously not to be spent until we get the grant. But it's in the 21st century, it's very hard to run a business in that kind of basis. So how do we deal with this in the town meeting context? Or can we deal with it in the town meeting context?
One of the first things that comes to mind is going to a representative form of town meeting, where people are elected and then they have the obligation to show up, and if they don't get reelected, and you have a set number of people coming and making the decisions.
Do you think it's realistic to expect that the town meeting as it's presently constituted and the people who come to it would approve such a thing?
I think it's possible.
You'd be out of a job and out of a big salary.
Well, no, I wouldn't, though. I mean, a representative town meeting still has a moderator.
Does it have a moderator?
Yeah, it runs just the same way, except instead of voters, you have...
And it meets more frequently, generally.
It can. Yeah. Doesn't have to, but it can.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't solve the problem I've been talking about if it met once a year.
No. I mean, you'd probably have more special meetings.
Right.
And maybe you'd set a fall meeting just as a general rule.
What about a town council form of government?
Well, that's a possibility too. I think that would be harder to get people to accept.
Mm-hmm.
I think people would be, maybe people would think they were in favor of it now, but I think when they realized that they had no power anymore, they might not be so happy.
Well, they vote for the members of the town council just the way they vote for the members of representative town meeting, right?
Correct.
So,
But when you vote a town council, it's a once a year thing, and then they can make decisions basically on the drop of a hat. There's very little public input, very little ability for people to participate. I mean, with a representative form of town meeting, you could still have citizens articles. With a town council form of government, that would go out.
That I was not aware of.
That would go out the window.
That's an interesting,
Right.
interesting point.
And zoning changes with a town council form of government can be enacted very quickly, with very little input. By the same token, if small groups of citizens want to try to put forth an initiative, it's very hard to get something like that going with a town council form of government.
From what you know about representative town meetings, how many people generally comprise the body of a representative town meeting?
I think it changes from town
I'm
to town,
sure
but
it does.
I mean, 100 would seem to be kind of a minimum number of people to have. And then we'd have to figure out, of course, how those people, would they be spread out? Would we have like precincts so that you'd have by population, you know, a couple people.
We'd have gerrymandering.
I know, right? You know, more people from town, a couple people from Wisconsin,
Right.
a couple people from Matticat. You know, have different areas of the island represented. I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting.
From your perspective as moderator and also as a citizen, are you generally happy with the town meeting as it now exists?
Well, I mean, obviously, I wish more people would show up, and I wish I understood better why they don't. Maybe our lives have just changed so much that it's just no longer something that people are interested in. In terms of the decisions that get made, when decisions are made, I'm generally happy with them. I mean, not always, but it's not always supposed to go my way either,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, right. Well, none of us all are happy all the time.
Right.
But it's
I think generally people, the end result is usually the right result.
I think the thing that perhaps some people are bothered by the most is sort of the bullet voting. The people who come for specific issues and then disappear.
Right.
And the fact that on the second or third night of town meeting, you may have in effect a representative town meeting by unelected people.
Right, exactly.
And that's troublesome for some
Right,
people.
for some people. But, you know, if you care, show up. I mean, I just don't know how to say it any other way.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to what people's priorities are on a given night in April.
Right.
When they've come home from a long day at work and they have mouths to feed
Right.
and we've tried Saturday, we've tried weekday nights, you know, none of them seem to make any difference.
No,
So it's a challenge.
it definitely is a challenge.
How do you see, the process is very drawn out of getting ready for a town meeting. I mean, you start basically in November, when you start with the citizens, the opening of the books for citizens
Right.
articles.
I mean, I think people are preparing really all year round. I mean, town departments,
Right.
as soon as soon as the annual's over, they start thinking about, well, what are our priorities for this year and how are we going to implement them?
And then
I mean,
what are we going to come back for next year?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been very little tweaking of the budget, or almost no consideration of the budget in recent years. The backlash seems to come in the vote after the Proposition 2.5
Right.
overrides that happen at town meeting, and then people go to the polls, some
Right.
of whom were there and some of whom were not there,
Right.
and vote against it.
Right. I think that happens a lot too, that people won't bother to come to town meeting and vote on something if they know it's going to be on the ballot. They'll vote at the ballot.
I wish I gave people that much credit. But you may be right.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody,
Yeah.
obviously, but because not a lot of people vote either, you know.
Right. Now, if we'd had some of these, well, we did have things on those money articles, the Proposition 2.5 override articles, ended up on the ballot.
Right.
Even
and they didn't pass.
And they didn't pass.
Right. So that's indicative to me of
Well,
a lack of support for the idea, which underscores
I mean, I had
why people didn't come to the
I had
town
people
meeting.
say to me that if it isn't discussed at town meeting, then it shouldn't be voted for. So there was some of that as well
Oh.
in the overall
Well,
mix of.
shouldn't is kind of a funny. Shouldn't be.
Well, no, that's
I
exactly
know.
the way they
I-
felt.
Well, I know, but
They said, I'm not going to vote for something that isn't discussed at town meeting.
right. Well, that's
And I
that's
think
a little different.
it is different with this system, though. I think there's some logic to it as
Right.
well. The thing that fascinates me is the people who are there who speak on most issues. And there's some of them, not a
Right.
whole lot, but there's
Right.
some of them who speak on almost every issue.
People
that comes
come and
up.
go too.
Right. And
People have their year.
yeah. And I've been known to speak up. I don't think I did this year, but well, certainly not at special town meeting.
I don't remember. But
What, from your perspective as moderator, sort of the upsides and the downsides of the job?
of my job?
Yes.
Well, I mean, you have to enjoy it. So I like doing it. That's the upside. I like being involved in the, government and with the people and hearing what people are concerned about
Right.
and learning about what is going on in the town. Those are all upsides. There's very little downside. I mean, the downside is,
How much time do you spend preparing?
it depends.
For an annual town meeting,
For an
special-
annual town meeting, there's quite a bit of preparation that goes into it.
Because I know you go to meetings with town department
Yeah, I
heads and
do.
so forth.
I used to go to all the meetings. I don't do that anymore. I usually
Same old, same old.
no, it's just I realized that I didn't need to, and that it really wasn't adding to what I was doing. I try to go to the public hearings. I try to kind of have an ear to the ground as to what the hot button issues are, and I try to talk to people on all sides of the issues, get a sense of who's
Do
concerned.
many people contact you ahead of time saying they are concerned about, they want to amend a?
Yes. Yeah. How do I do it? I have a slide. I want to put something up. I have a person who wants to come who isn't a voter.
And they
there's-
contact you directly?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They do. So yeah, there's a lot of that.
It's decided by the town that town meeting is going to stay the form of government.
Right.
Or let's put it another way, if it's not decided that there should be another form of government. Are there things that you think can be done to improve the process?
Well, I'd still like to try the electronic voting. I wish it wasn't so expensive
Right.
because it's a big expenditure. If it's
How,
not,
do you have any sense of how much it would cost?
well, when I looked into it a few years ago, it was like, I think the whole thing for 3 nights was going to be $40-something thousand. And then we were going to try it at one point, and then we didn't. And then the meeting that we were going to try it at, we didn't have one hand count. And it's slower than just a voice vote. It's
Right.
slightly slower than just a voice vote. But maybe people would come if we didn't have to have all the hand counts.
Yeah, I think people, the anonymity of it
Right.
would have some appeal probably.
That
to people,
might help.
Yeah.
There's and the technology keeps changing,
Right.
and it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
So, and back at the time, I think there was only one. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. There was only one company that was really doing it in Massachusetts. And they said they could do our meeting, but we'd have to change when we had our meeting, and there were all sorts of things that
Didn't work.
didn't really work. Our meeting time is pretty much slotted where it is, because if we do it too early, we can't get ready. If we do it too much later, everybody's already into the summer season and it's too late.
Right.
So we're kind of stuck. And then we have,
Well, it'd be great if at some point we could try it, but obviously.
and then we have all those issues with holidays and
Right.
things in there too. So yeah, the idea of having to move it to accommodate the voting people wasn't appealing.
Right, I can understand that. Well, it's interesting, more to talk about as time goes on.
I mean, I
We'll-
think that's definitely
Yeah.
worth pursuing, because I think it might make a difference for people.
Right.
I went to a couple of meetings where they had electronic voting. It was interesting.
Is it 40,000, would that be a one-time investment, or is that
That's
each time?
every time.
Each time. And then the people who take home the voting things.
Right.
That's another
Well,
problem.
yeah, I know. They're pretty good about collecting them on the door, at
Yeah.
the door on the way out,
Right.
and then they can track them by voter
Mhm.
and figure
That's
out who had them. And, yeah.
So Big Brother is watching.
Big Brother is definitely watching.
Sarah Alger, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Okay.
your thoughts.
Good to see
Appreciate
you.
it. Nice to see you.